Hi everyone, it's Gail here live with the Ignite show, not quite live at 5. It's 20 past 5. I was running, so I've just delivered my masterclass. So I do a free masterclass from time to time on the 5 ways to make an impact as a leader in tech. And I've just delivered that. So kind of was getting organized for that, delivering that, finishing that off, and yeah, and so here we are. So that's why I'm a little bit later today. So today I am still talking about managing conflict. So I was talking about that in my free group yesterday, actually, all about managing conflicts. I thought I would do that on the Ignite show as well. So if you are on watching me live, I see somebody has just joined me. So if you are watching me live, let me know where you are, how you are, what you are up to, whereabout you are, what you're up to, and how your day has been. That would be awesome if you could just pop a little note in the comments for me so that I know who is watching me, because it's quite disconcerting sometimes. Oh, they've just popped off, I scared them off. But it's quite disconcerting sometimes when you're on live and then somebody that you know that somebody's watching you, but you don't know who it is. So they're watching you, and they can see you, but you can't see them. So if you do happen to pop up live, then let me know who you are, where you are, and how you are today. And if you're watching on replay, do the same. So hashtag replay if you're watching on replay. Let me know how you are. So so today I'm talking about managing conflict again. And what I'd like you to think about is, so we all get into conflict from time to time, right? It's inevitable that unless we never come into contact with anybody else, which actually it's quite likely at the moment, given the current situation with the virus and local lockdowns and things like that, then maybe that's not actually that difficult to imagine. But just want you to think about when you are working with other people, right? And this can actually be, you're working with other people, or it can be even, it doesn't have to be working, but you're coming into contact with other people, and sometimes we bump into each other, right? So, we step on each other's toes. We don't need to do it, but we step on each other's toes, and things can get a bit fractious and people get upset, and before we know it, something can escalate, and you're like, well, how did we end up here? What just happened? What just happened? But then when we get to that point, right? When we get to that point, what do we do, right? And most of us have a default approach, and most of us just have a way that we handle that, and it's useful to know and understand what your default way of approaching conflict is. And it's also useful to know and understand that there are other ways to approach conflict, and sometimes it can make sense to try something different, right? Try something different. So I'm going to take you through a model. It's an old model, but it's just, it's still relevant right now, but it is an old model. But I'm going to take you through that model. And I'm curious to know, what that means for you and what you think of it. So I see there are 4 people on watching me live just now, which is great. So if you are on live, if you could just drop me a little comment so that I know who is here. So who is here? What are you up to? Where are you? How is your day going? What's going on for you? Who are you? Where are you? And what is going on? Drop me a little comment so that I know who's on. And if you are watching on replay, hashtag replay. And yeah, let me know the same, what you're up to, where you are, what you're doing, what's going on for you. So imagine the scenario, right? Something has just happened, something's kicked off, you have got into some sort of situation, and maybe you're in that situation right now, right? Because conflict's never far away. So maybe there's a situation that you're aware of right now where it's Sandra. Sandra is on. Hi, Sandra, in Berlin. How are you? Thank you for joining. Thank you for dropping me a comment. Now I know who I'm speaking to. It makes such a difference. Thank you for joining me live. And somebody else is on, so if you want to drop your name in and let me know who you are, that would be great as well. So think about a scenario or a situation that you are in right now where there is conflict, right? Because conflict's never far away. There's always something hovering around where, there's just something going on that's making you feel unsettled, making you feel a little bit uneasy. There's maybe, some fractiousness, don't even know if that is a word, But there's something going on where you're bumping into somebody, and either they've upset you, you've upset them, and before you know it, we've just got this unease hanging around. So what I want to know is, so Sandra, I think you're the only person that's watching me live right now, so you can maybe answer this. Sandra's saying, yes, I was teaching online the whole day. Oh my goodness. Teaching online the whole day, that's tough, actually, being online the whole day, because it's not the same as interacting in person, is it? It's different. It is definitely different. So have a think about that situation for you. What does that look like for you? What does it feel like for you? What is the situation? But just familiarize yourself with that right now, and just notice how you're feeling, right? Just notice how you're feeling. So I'm just saying, yes, it's very hard for online teaching all day. It's very hard. And so I want you to think about, like, what do you normally do, right? So if you're in that situation right now, how are you handling it? Like, what is your approach? How are you reacting? What's your next step? What action are you taking? What does that typically look like for you? What does that typically look like? So Sandra, you can kind of play along with this if you want, but have a think about what does that scenario look like for you right now, and how are you planning to tackle it? Like, how are you planning to deal with it? Or maybe you have tried to deal with it. What did you do? Right? What did you do? Or maybe you can think of a situation where you were in conflict in the past. What happened? What did you do? How did it work? How did you resolve it? Did you resolve it? Maybe you didn't. Maybe it's still festering, right? So just call on that right now and have a think about that, because I really want to know what's your default mechanism for dealing with conflict. And so the model that I'm going to share with you is a really old one. So I think it comes from the 70s, actually, but it still makes sense and it's still relevant. But it's the Thomas Klinsman model. So I'm not going to share a picture of it or anything like that. I'm just going to talk around it. But the Thomas Klinsman model, right, for managing conflict. Sandra is saying, I always try to get out of the situation. So that sounds like you might be avoiding the conflict, Sandra. Would that be right? Avoiding. So here's the thing. Sandra is saying, I always try to get out of the situation. Right, so the Thomas Klinsman model gives us 5 different approaches to conflict, right? And interestingly, the first one is avoiding, right? The first one is, depending on what the situation is, I might avoid this conflict, right? I might turn away from it. Sandra's saying, no, trying to get powerful. So I'm not sure what you mean by that, Sandra. So you're trying to get out of the situation, but trying to get powerful. You need to help me understand because I'm getting 2 different things. I'm trying to get powerful and I'm trying to get out of the situation. Don't know. Yeah, help me to understand that. But the first thing in the model, though, is avoiding. So when you're in conflict, you might avoid the conflict. You might turn away from it. You might walk away from it. You might just be like, do you know what? I'm not dealing with this. So that is one approach. So Sandra's saying, before solving the conflict, you're trying to get powerful before solving the conflict. Is that what you mean? I'm not sure if that's what you mean. So one thing that we might do is we might avoid it, right? That is the first thing that they share, the Thomas Klinsman model. They've got 5 approaches, and one of them is avoiding. So you might avoid whatever is going on. The second thing is accommodating, right? So you might be in a situation where there's conflict, and you might decide that rather than avoiding it, right? So rather than not dealing with it, you might decide, actually, the conflict, it's not worth it for me to stand my ground. So I'm just going to accommodate, whatever's going on, whatever's causing the conflict. You're going to be accommodating, and you're going to basically yield to the people around you, the other person, whoever you're in conflict with, and so you're going to be accommodating. So you can start with avoiding, then there might be accommodating. The next one is compromising, right? And this is probably one of the ones that I should think, is that my go-to place? Do I try to compromise? I probably do try and compromise. So with compromising, you're basically looking to figure out, right, if there's conflict, so if we're bumping into each other here, what is it that you want? What is it that I want? And how can we compromise? So how can we both move a little bit to come closer together, right? So how can we both yield on something? How can we both give up something so that we can move close to get closer to what we both want? Maybe not exactly what we both want, but can we at least agree on something that kind of works for both of us? That's compromise. Compromising is all about negotiating. So what do you want? What do I want? How can we make it work for both of us? That's compromising. But compromising usually means you giving up something. It might not be giving up on everything, but it usually means you've got to give up on something. But sometimes it's a strategy that can work, right? It just depends on the situation. Another approach is competing, right? So we've got avoiding, accommodating, compromising, and then we've got competing, right? So competing is when no matter what, right? No matter what, you're standing your ground. You are going all in to get what you want because you are so passionate about what you want. It's so important to you that there's just no compromise. There's no willingness to move. There's no budging, right? You are steadfast. This is it, and you will do what it takes to get what you want, right? So that's competing. So no matter what, you're going to stand, hold your ground, stick to your guns, and make sure you get what you want. That's competing. And then the last one, the fifth approach, is collaborating, right? So collaborating, it's a little bit like compromising, except it's not really a compromise. Collaborating is about, right, well, how can we put our heads together and figure out how to make all of this work, right? So I'm not going to yield, you're not going to yield, but what we're going to do is we're going to work together and we're going to figure out a way how we can make this work and accommodate what we both want, right? So we're going to collaborate on something to make sure that we both get what we want, and we're going to work at it and keep working at it until we figure it out. So those are the 5 different strategies from the Thomas Klinsman model for managing or dealing with conflict. So we've got avoiding. I'm going to ignore this. I'm going to put my head in the sands. I'm just talk to the hand. I'm not interested. I'm not dealing with this. I'm walking away from this. Accommodating. Okay, I'm giving in. You can have what you want. That's fine by me. I'm just going to back down. Compromising. What do we both give up in order to kind of make headway and move forward? Competing. I'm in it to win. Like that. There's no way I'm giving up anything. This is what I want, and I'm standing my ground. To collaborating. Let's figure out how we can both win. Let's figure out how we can win together and get past this. Tanuja is on. Good morning, Tanuja. Tanuja is saying good morning, Gail Logan. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good evening here. So that's it. So those are the 5 strategies. So the thing to think about this is, first of all, we tend to have a default way when we get into so let me get my teeth back in today. We tend to have a default approach when we get into conflict. So when we get into conflict, we typically react the same way, right? Whichever your way is, doesn't really matter. It's just to know and be aware that we usually act the same way when we get into conflict. And the thing about this is, it's about having awareness that there's more than one way to manage conflict. And so you might want to try different ways of managing conflict depending on what's important to you. But the other thing about this is the way to figure that out and the way to decide, right? So what is my best approach for managing this conflict right now in this situation with this person or with this group? It ultimately comes down to how important is this relationship to me, first of all, and how important is the thing that we're disagreeing on or that we're in conflict about to me? Because depending on those 2 things, that's going to drive you in a particular direction. Because if the relationship is vitally important to you, then regardless of the situation you're in, you might actually think, you know what, usually I try and collaborate, or usually I would stand my ground on this, but this relationship is so important to me, I am going to be accommodating on this occasion. It's not what I would normally do, but in this scenario, that's what I'm choosing to do, right? Or it could be that you don't normally advocate for what you want. You don't normally stand your ground. You don't normally, really press for what you want. But because the thing that you're in conflict over is so important to you, you may choose to go down that route because you're so passionate about it, right? But ultimately, it comes down to how much passion do you have for the thing that you're disagreeing on, and how important is the relationship? Because if the relationship isn't that important, well, then you might go all in and stand your ground because you don't actually care what the consequence is. Or you might think, well, normally I would compete, but this relationship is really important to me. Therefore, I'm going to have to collaborate, and we're going to have to figure out a way around it. We're just going to have to put our heads together here and figure out how we get past this and what we can do that's going to work for both of us. And if you're getting into conflict over a thing that's not that important, well, then that might be when you just accommodate and you're like, well, do you know what? I actually don't care that much. So that's whatever, that's fine. I'm just going to accommodate it. But the important thing is to recognize and know, well, if we're getting stuck in conflict and we can't get past it, is there another approach? Is there another way to look at it? Is there a different strategy that I could implement that might help me get past it, right? So those are the 5 things: avoiding, accommodating, compromising, competing, and collaborating. So let me know what that looks like for you. Let me know what you typically do when you get into conflict. Let me know how you might approach conflict differently when you think about those 5, not 4, 5 different approaches. Hope that was helpful, and I